Welcome to the introductory PrepFit instructional presentation. This is a part of a series of presentations on the use of the various features in the PrEP implementation planning, monitoring, and evaluation tool, or PrepIt. PrepIt is a decision-making and analysis tool with several interrelated modules used for target setting, costing, and commodities forecasting. This presentation is the first in a series of presentations on features and functions of PrepIt. We are going to start with some key concepts for PrEP target setting. Let's first think about why we set targets. Can you think of some reasons? Here are some reasons that PrepIt users have given us for why they set targets. Why are you interested in using PrepIt today? The purpose of your target setting exercise will inform some of the decisions you make about how you will use the tool and which aspects of the tool you will use. We will talk about this further as we walk through the tool together. What is a target? PrEP targets are different from what we might be used to when setting targets for other HIV programs like antiretroviral therapy and voluntary medical male circumcision. It's easy to set targets for ART and VMMC using demographic models. With ART, you just need to know how many HIV positive people there are or the size of the flask. And your coverage is just the number of people on ART, represented by how full the flask is, divided by the number of HIV positive people. You might need to know how many new infections there are and how many deaths, but setting targets for ART is pretty simple. The same with VMMC. Since people only get circumcised once in their lives, hopefully, you just need to know the size of the uncircumcised population. You might need to adjust for people aging in to the eligible population and for mortality, but it's pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, it is not possible to set targets for PrEP using a simple demographic model like this. For one thing, with PrEP, it is more difficult to define the size of the population in need. The eligible population is those at substantial risk of HIV, which can be difficult to define and can vary across countries and settings. In addition, people don't take PrEP continuously, nor do they need to. People go through different times in their lives when they are more or less likely to be exposed to HIV, and their use of PrEP may change depending on their life circumstances. Therefore, when setting targets for PrEP, we need to ask not just how many people, but how often are they accessing PrEP? How much PrEP will they use? Without some information about the duration and frequency of PrEP use, we can't project costs, forecast product needs, or estimate the impact of our targets. Within PrepIt, we have conceptualized the dynamics of PrEP use using rates of continuation and reinitiation. We'll delve deeper into these concepts in a subsequent module. For now, we just need to start thinking about how setting targets for PrEP is more complex than some other program areas. Here are some different ways in which PrEP targets have been conceptualized. You can see that these different ways of setting targets will give us very different results. They are not interchangeable, so we have to pay close attention to how targets are defined and what they mean. What do you think is the most useful way to define targets for PrEP for your program? Here are some thoughts about ways program planners might think about targets. What could you do with each of these in terms of planning and managing your program? What would each one tell you? Number of new PrEP users, coverage of each priority population, either over time or at a given point in time, total amount of product used throughout the planning period or person years of prep. So now we're going to move into a new topic. One of the questions we get asked frequently is, how long will it take us to use Prep-It to set our targets? On the next few slides, we're going to talk through some learnings from countries that have used Prep-It. It's a good idea to put some thought into planning the process of target setting before embarking on it to ensure that you won't get stuck halfway through. These are some suggestions about steps your team may want to consider when planning your target setting exercise. You will, of course, modify them based on your specific needs, but it's a good idea to put a little thought into the process before starting. Who will be responsible for which steps? Who needs to be consulted? What will be the timing of each step? When do we need to have the targets finalized by? First, you will want to agree among your team as to the purpose of the target setting exercise. Are you setting national targets as part of a national strategic planning process? Will these targets be used for funding applications for a specific funder? Are you trying to quantify how much prep commodities you will be needing? The answers to these questions will affect the time frame over which you want to set your targets, whether you want to cost your targets, which costs should be included, and so on. You may want to use your targets for multiple purposes, and that's okay as long as you are clear on what the specific needs are. We've seen a number of instances when key stakeholders have not been engaged in the process, and then the targets or target setting process can get derailed. It's a good idea to think in advance who will need to weigh in on the targets before they are finalized and proactively decide when and how to engage them. Make sure it's clear who is responsible for seeing the target setting process through from start to finish. You may want to create a task force or engage an existing technical working group to oversee the process and ensure it keeps moving forward. Whoever is responsible for target setting will want to gather and review any important background documents before starting. These policies, situational analyses, and data reports will inform every aspect of target setting. If you need your targets to be costed, you may want to engage a costing expert to ensure the tool is configured properly to estimate costs and to make appropriate use of any local cost data. The target setting process may require financial and human resources, like a consultant or venues for stakeholder meetings. Who will provide these? It may sound like overkill, but it's a good idea to develop a work plan for the target setting process, to sketch out who needs to do which steps and at what times. People are busy, and a work plan will help to ensure that the process gets completed. Once you have done all the preparatory steps and are ready to start the target setting process, you will of course want to know what to expect. An important piece to acknowledge is that the process is usually iterative. You will likely go through the tool, create draft targets, and then realize that some of your inputs and assumptions need to be changed. Or you will come up with draft targets, and then the stakeholders could say they're too high or too low, and you will need to revise them. Plan for this to happen. The trickiest thing about using Prep-It isn't the tool itself, it's understanding the data that are available in your country and how it should be used appropriately in the tool. Data availability and data systems differ across countries, so this will present a unique challenge for each country. Now that we've provided some background about prep targets and the target setting process, let's talk about Prep-It itself. Prep-It stands for the Prep Implementation, Planning, Monitoring, and Evaluation Tool. The tool was originally developed in 2019 and funded by USAID through 3 projects, HP Plus, Options, and ETAP 2. Now it's being further developed and supported under the Mosaic Consortium. You can find the tool freely available at www.prepitweb.org. Prepit is a decision-making and analysis tool with interrelated modules. The tool can set targets, forecast the costs of reaching the targets, estimate the impact of targets, and forecast the need for commodities based on the targets. This series of presentations will review the needed inputs and outputs of the tool. Prepit was designed to be flexible, to meet the needs of different types of users, and adapt to the wide variability in prep program design. The tool can be applied at different levels, including the national, subnational, donor, implementer, or site level. Additionally, the tool can be applied to multiple prep methods simultaneously, such as the pill and the ring. The most common reason for using Prepit is to set targets, where targets are set by different priority populations. In using Prepit, users can generate targets based on the desired coverage for different populations at elevated risk for HIV, or they can manually enter already existing targets to explore related costs, impact, and commodity needs. The costing module in Prepit uses the cost per visit and accounts for the length of time PrEP clients stay on PrEP and the visit schedules for when clients are supposed to receive PrEP refills. The commodity forecasting feature estimates monthly commodity needs and costs throughout the target setting period, which is useful for program planning and supply chain management. Countries use Prepit as a comprehensive tool to guide and strengthen their national HIV prevention efforts, ensuring that resources are allocated efficiently, programs are evidence-based, and targets are aligned with global and regional goals. Here are some examples of what countries use Prepit for. Several countries have been trained on using Prepit in 2 different workshops, which were a collaboration between UNAIDS and the USAID Mosaic project. In both workshops, participants learned how to use the tool and shared their experiences as well as setting draft PrEP targets. The East and Southern Africa workshops were held in Lusaka, Zambia in late August of 2022, and the West and Central Africa workshop was held in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire in January 2023. The content covered in this series of presentations was adapted from the workshop materials and updated to reflect the latest changes made to Prepit. If you're in one of the countries highlighted in this map, you might want to reach out to the people who attended the training and see if they're able to participate in your exercise.